Hello everybody, welcome back to Punk Right. My name is Smee and I'm here with Luz, who is the official translator for Hope in Paradise, the children's book that we've recently put out through Punk Right Publishing. Today we're going to talk about the art and the beauty of translation. Stick around. Before we get into the content today, I'd like to formally invite you to subscribe to the channel or like the content. Here on Punk Right, we try to provide thoughtful and inquisitive topics that hopefully you're interested in. Stick around. Great. Hello, Luz. Thanks for joining us today. It's a pleasure. This is actually our second try at this because we, upon reflection, decided that this should take a different direction because the whole idea of translation and translating works is not as simple as one might perceive. Even though in Hope for Paradise you're looking at just a few sentences of translation, when you start thinking about more complex texts, the philosophy behind the language involved is something worth talking about, which is why Luz is here today. So before we get started, can you just tell a little bit about yourself? How'd you get into translation and what is some of the motivating factors that cause you to love it? Because you talk about it with such frequency.
I think it's just because I read a lot and I love words, and because I'm bilingual and I have always been fascinated by words, and because I used to write. I thought I was going to be a writer, but I didn't become a writer. So yeah, it's fascinating. To me, it's great to translate, especially because it's like you enter into another different zone, language zone, and that is fantastic.
So we talked a little bit briefly about this whole idea of language zone, and it's hard for people who don't understand two languages well, because I think you have to really have some more than proficiency, a certain level of fluency to understand the nuances of language, which when you're translating is hugely important. Can you tell me a little bit about how you sense those zones or what those zones mean to you in terms of the two languages you speak, which is English and Spanish, which are English and Spanish?
How do I sense those zones?
It's a very abstract question, but
It's
translation
very
is very abstract.
It
because
is.
It's not just about the words, it's about something deeper behind those words.
Yeah, like we were talking a few moments ago. You know, as exact as language is, that it's, you know, it's language, names, tags, labels, you know, and it's you convey a message through the language. That's the way you use it. It's not exact when you are translating. So you use all the nuances, you have your palette, and you start translating. And
You have your palette. What do you mean by that?
you have a palette. It's not like you have a dictionary or a glossary of this word matches with this. It's not like that. So, like I said to you before, when you want to translate, or when you have a job to translate a novel, a book, a text, the number one thing to me is that you have to love it. You have to fall in love. But that doesn't happen most of the times.
You have to fall in love with the text.
Yes.
With the meaning of the text.
Yes. And so it's a love story. When you right off the bat you fall in love with the text. When you don't, because if you're a translator, that's going to happen many times as well. So you have to get as familiar as you can. So you have to like live with that family that you don't like, but since you love the words and since you're fascinated with the words, you know, everything starts getting easier, you know?
You talk about the palette, and the palette being a certain element of word, but something with languages happens, which is very curious, is that you can take certain words that have a specified meaning, but when you start stringing them together in a longer sentence, the clarity of that meaning becomes more and more abstract, or I should say the essence of that meaning. And so when you look at one language to another, the essence of a sentence or the essence of a story becomes very difficult to grasp. And the translation of that is also a very ambiguous task. Mm-hmm. How do you tackle that task? How do you make that jump between maintaining meaning across the minutia of language?
Yeah, I understand that. Well,
That was
there
a
are,
complex question, I'm
yes,
sorry.
no, but believe it or not, when you're a translator, there are around between 5 and 7 techniques for translation. One, it's you copy the exact meaning from the language to the target language, but that's not what you have to do. What you have to do is exactly what you just said. You have to version it. You have to make it work for you, especially what we talked about when we talked about liking a text, fall in love with the text, understanding the text, getting familiar with the text, and also we have to rewrite, excuse me, but we have to rewrite what you did.
So how do you maintain authenticity in that rewrite? Which is also a
Faith.
Cross your hands and just hope.
Well, because, it's a job that you always do, and it's a very risky job, and don't think that translators always get the job. You have to, translate an important extract of the text that you wish to translate, or that you were commissioned or asked to translate, in order to prove that you are the right translator.
To maintain the essence of that work.
Exactly. And like you have to, like for example, there are legal translators. They're perfect for that. I hate it, but I've done it.
That's very specific work.
Very specific wording, and legal also. And then medical translators, and then literary translators. So it's for...
Yeah, and I don't think I ever valued the translator on a text. One of my favorite authors is José Saramago, who writes actually in Portuguese, which is close to Spanish, but it's not Spanish.
It's not.
And when you look at trying to, I guess, capture the message of a book or of a text, the cultural element of where that comes from is just as important as the actual wording of the phrases itself. And so when you go from there, Portuguese to Spanish, the differences is less, but when you go from there to English, you're looking at even greater differences. So the translator, he or she is in charge of doing that work, is so important to maintaining that, the value of that text that I've come to appreciate very, very much.
Saudade, for example.
Saudade.
For example,
Brazilian word, or it's a Brazilian word.
Yes.
But it's a Brazilian word, right? I wouldn't even call it Portuguese. Do they use it in Portuguese?
Yes.
They do.
Yes,
Okay.
but it's Brazilian. You're totally
it's the essence
right.
of the culture. It's the culture aspect of Brazil.
Yes, and it's so hard to explain what saudade is. You could say nostalgia, but if you have lived there, and if you know what saudade is, and if you're Brazilian, there is no way in the world you're going to be happy with nostalgia or, I don't know, sadness, or no way in the world, Or maybe for us and Colombians, there is no way in the world that cool is ever going to be chévere.
So,
Never.
what you're doing when you have that translation is you're taking some cognitive aspect, which is the meaning, the defined meaning of the word, but also, wrapping it in some sort of emotional aspect that you have to maintain across languages, which is very difficult, and that is the art of translation. When you think about translation, if I could just kind of close this up, there is a certain truth that you're trying to obtain or maintain, and that truth is not easily sought when you're just looking at the individuality of words. You need to look at the essence, the meaning, the deeper part that is conveyed through that author's perspective, and that is the challenge and the beauty.
Which is what happened.
Which is what happened with Hope
for Paradise. And when we were thinking about hope, esperanza para el paraíso, esperanza por el paraíso. So you can, it's to me, it's great because you can stay forever stuck, which is not the idea, never, and it's not, it's It's not the way you make money. But it's perfect because you can stay forever, you know, thinking about esperanza para el paraíso, esperanza por el paraíso. ¿Qué es lo que quiere decir artículo? Is this the right word? Is this the right article? Is this the right, how do you say hiro in English?
The right turn.
Turn, yeah. Exactly. Is this the right turn for the translation? So.
And with that, we'll leave you thinking about the words that you write. Stick around on Punk Write for the next turn or hiro. Until then, just keep writing. Punk Write.